In the summer of 2007, the small town of Westbrook, Michigan, was a place where everyone knew each other. With a population just over 3,000, it was a peaceful, tight-knit community where nothing ever seemed out of place. The town was quiet, its streets lined with old buildings, and its residents leading simple lives. But all that changed when the body of 19-year-old Ethan Parker was found near the woods on the outskirts of town. Ethan's death was a brutal one. He had been strangled, and his body showed signs of a violent struggle. The fact that he had defensive wounds, indicating he fought for his life, added to the sense of unease that soon gripped the town. The peaceful image of Westbrook was shattered. Detective Samuel Cross, a seasoned investigator from Detroit, was called in to help solve the case. When he arrived in Westbrook, the tension in the air was palpable. The residents, normally so familiar with one another, were now fearful and suspicious. As the investigation began, it became clear to Cross that there was much more to Ethan Parker's death than met the eye. The first person Detective Cross focused on was Rachel Thompson, a 55-year-old widow who lived on the outskirts of town, not far from where Ethan's body had been found. Rachel was well known in Westbrook. She had lived there for years and was a quiet, respectable woman. However, her calm demeanor during questioning raised suspicions in Cross's mind. She was asked about her relationship with Ethan, and though she insisted they were just friends, there was something about her response that felt off. Rachel confirmed that Ethan often came over to her house to help with small tasks, but she vehemently denied any romantic involvement. She claimed that on the night of the murder, she had been at home alone, unaware of what had happened. Despite her insistence that she had no knowledge of the crime, her behavior made Cross feel that there was something more to the story. As the investigation unfolded, the town of Westbrook remained on edge. People started to close their doors earlier, avoiding the streets after dark, as fear spread that a killer might still be lurking in their midst. The police had no leads at first, and suspicion began to fall on a few other local residents. Among them was Jason Carter, a man with a criminal past who lived just outside the town center. Jason had been caught by the police multiple times for minor crimes, including fights and petty thefts, but had always managed to escape serious punishment. A search of Jason's garage revealed a rope with traces of blood on it. The blood was confirmed to match Ethan's. This discovery immediately made Jason the prime suspect, and he was detained for questioning. Jason denied any involvement in Ethan's death. He claimed that the rope had been in his garage for years, and he didn't know how the blood had gotten on it. He was adamant that he was home alone the night of the murder. But Detective Cross was unconvinced, and Jason's story only seemed to raise more questions. Despite Jason's arrest, the town was still gripped by fear. Everyone in Westbrook began to question who might be next, if the killer was indeed still out there. The authorities were under pressure to solve the case quickly. But as Detective Cross delved deeper into Jason's life, he started to notice inconsistencies in the evidence. There were no other traces linking Jason to the crime scene, and it appeared that someone might be trying to frame him. Cross turned his attention to other leads. Sheriff Alan Grant, who was less experienced in criminal investigations but knew the people of Westbrook well, began gathering rumors and information from the townsfolk. Grant learned that Ethan had been acting strangely in the months leading up to his death. He had distanced himself from his old friends, began associating with people of questionable character, and even started dating a few individuals with known criminal backgrounds. One of these individuals was a man named Edward Davis, a newcomer to Westbrook who had only moved to the town a year earlier. Edward Davis was an enigmatic figure. He kept to himself and rarely interacted with the other residents. When Detective Cross spoke with him, Davis appeared nervous and evasive. He claimed that he and Ethan only knew each other casually, and that their conversations had always been about business matters. But as the detective pressed him about the night of Ethan's murder, Davis became increasingly agitated. He couldn't provide an alibi for that night, and his nervousness only intensified when the conversation turned to his relationship with Ethan. Continued to dig into Ethan's background, hoping to uncover any connections that might lead to a breakthrough. It turned out that Ethan had borrowed a significant sum of money from a local lender, someone who had connections to Edward Davis. This new information painted a troubling picture. Ethan had apparently become involved in some dangerous activities, including illegal drug transactions, and had accumulated debts that he couldn't pay back. Detective Cross started to build a new theory. Perhaps Ethan had gotten mixed up in Davis's criminal dealings, and when he couldn't pay his debts, Davis decided to kill him to silence him. But the question remained, how was Rachel Thompson involved in all of this? Could she be the key to understanding what had happened? Cross brought Rachel in for another round of questioning. This time, he asked her directly if she knew about Ethan's involvement with Davis and his debts. Rachel admitted that she was aware Ethan had been facing some financial problems, but had never realized the extent of them. She insisted that she had only tried to help him, as any concerned person would, but her answers weren't entirely convincing. Detective Cross began to suspect that Rachel might have known more than she was letting on, possibly even playing a role in the events that led to Ethan's death. Investigation continued. Detective Cross decided to take a bold step. He arranged a confrontation between Rachel and Edward Davis. He hoped that their reactions to each other would reveal the truth. During the confrontation, Davis, under pressure, tried to accuse Rachel of blackmailing him, claiming she had forced him into murder to cover up his past crimes. Rachel immediately denied these accusations, but her defensive response only raised further suspicions. Cross knew that he was on the verge of solving the case, but he needed more evidence to back up his suspicions. He ordered a thorough re-examination of all the evidence. Forensic experts confirmed that the rope with Ethan's blood on it had indeed been in Jason Carter's garage, but there was no other trace of him at the crime scene. This suggested that Jason had been framed. Meanwhile, Sheriff Grant, continuing his own line of investigation, found a witness who had seen Ethan on the night of his murder with a man who closely resembled Edward Davis. This was the final piece of the puzzle. Davis, under the pressure of the evidence, was arrested. He confessed to the murder, explaining that Ethan had become a liability, someone who knew too much about his criminal dealings. Davis had used Rachel's connection to Ethan to get close to him, and when Ethan demanded repayment for his debts, Davis decided that the only way to protect himself was to eliminate him. With Edward Davis in custody, the case was closed. The town of Westbrook, though relieved to have the killer behind bars, would never be the same. The fear and suspicion that had consumed the town slowly began to fade, but the memory of Ethan Parker's death lingered in the hearts of its residents. Though the investigation had ended, the impact of Ethan Parker's murder was far-reaching. Edward Davis was convicted of the crime and sentenced to life in prison without parole. Rachel Thompson, though not directly involved, found herself ostracized by the community. The town's whispers followed her as she decided to leave Westbrook and start over in another place, far from the rumors and judgment. Her daughter Lily had returned to Westbrook to support her, but after everything that had happened, she too moved away with her mother, understanding that their lives in Westbrook could never go back to what they once were. Sheriff Alan Grant, still haunted by the case, resolved to improve safety and strengthen the relationship between the police and the community. As for Detective Samuel Cross, the case left a lasting mark on him. He had solved the murder, but the town's broken trust, the shattered peace, and the realization that even in small, quiet towns, danger could lurk in the shadows, would stay with him for years to come. Westbrook slowly returned to its quiet life, but the echoes of Ethan's death remained a constant reminder that evil could strike in the most unexpected of places, and that no community, no matter how small, was ever truly safe.